What if I told you that the secret to attracting unexpected money isn't about working harder, stressing more, or chasing every opportunity, but about something so simple, so almost playful, that most people overlook it? There's a technique, often called the ladder technique, that has quietly transformed the way people manifest their desires, especially money, in ways that feel almost unreal. And the beauty of it is this: it doesn't ask you to force belief, it doesn't demand you to be perfect, and it certainly doesn't require you to know how the money will come. Instead, it works by gently shifting your inner world, planting a vivid, repeated experience in your mind until it feels natural, almost inevitable. Imagine going to sleep each night, not worrying about bills or lack, but calmly stepping into a simple mental scene, like climbing a ladder over and over until your subconscious accepts it as truth. And then suddenly, life starts reflecting that inner shift back to you in the form of unexpected opportunities, surprise income, or money arriving from places you never anticipated. This isn't about luck, it's about alignment. And today, you're going to discover how something so small can unlock something so powerful. It sounds almost too simple to be true, doesn't it? The idea that something as ordinary as imagining yourself climbing a ladder could somehow influence your reality, especially when it comes to money. Most people hear about the ladder technique and immediately dismiss it. They think, how can this possibly help me attract real, tangible wealth? And honestly, that reaction makes sense. We've been conditioned to believe that money only comes from hard effort, long hours, and constant struggle. So when something quiet, internal, and almost effortless shows up as an alternative, it feels suspicious. But what if that's exactly why it works? The ladder technique isn't really about the ladder at all. That's the part many people misunderstand. The ladder is just a tool, a neutral, simple mental scene that doesn't carry emotional baggage. You're not imagining money directly, which means you're not triggering all those hidden doubts, fears, or limiting beliefs you might have about wealth. Instead, you're training your mind in a much subtler way. You're teaching it how to accept an idea as real through repetition and experience, rather than force and logic. Think about it for a moment. Every night, as you lie down and close your eyes, your mind begins to drift into that soft, relaxed state between wakefulness and sleep. This is where the ladder technique comes alive. You gently bring your awareness to a single, clear scene, your hands touching the ladder, the texture of the wood or metal, the feeling of lifting your foot and placing it on the next step, the rhythm of climbing higher. You don't rush it, you don't overthink it. You just experience it as if it's happening right now. And you repeat this night after night until it feels familiar, almost ordinary. What's happening beneath the surface is powerful. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what's vividly imagined and what's physically real. When you consistently feed it the same experience, it begins to accept it as truth. And once something is accepted as truth internally, life has a strange way of reflecting it externally. That's the real foundation of the ladder technique. Not the ladder itself, but the process of impressing an idea so deeply into your subconscious that reality starts to rearrange around it. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. While you're doing this nightly visualization, you're also asked to do something that seems completely contradictory. During the day, you mentally affirm that you will not climb a ladder. It sounds odd, almost like a joke, but this step is intentional. It creates a kind of tension between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind is saying no, while your subconscious has already accepted yes through repeated experience. And guess which one wins? The subconscious always does. This is where many people have their aha moment. They begin to realize that manifestation isn't about forcing belief on the surface level. You don't have to walk around all day trying to convince yourself that you're rich or that money is coming. In fact, trying too hard often backfires because it keeps your attention on the lack. The ladder technique bypasses all of that. It works quietly in the background where real change actually happens. And once you understand this, you start to see how it applies to money. The ladder is just the training ground. It shows you that your imagination, when used consistently and with feeling, has the power to create real experiences. So when you eventually shift that same process toward wealth, imagining yourself receiving money, feeling financially secure, experiencing abundance, it doesn't feel forced anymore. It feels natural because you've already proven to yourself how the mechanism works. What makes this technique so powerful is its simplicity. There's no pressure to get it perfect. There's no need to constantly check for results or worry if you're doing it right. In fact, the less you obsess over it, the better it tends to work. You're simply planting a seed and allowing it to grow in its own time. And often the results show up in ways you didn't expect. Small at first, then gradually more noticeable, until you can't ignore the pattern anymore. So if you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or skeptical about manifestation, the ladder technique offers a different approach. It's not about blind belief or wishful thinking. It's about experience. It's about showing your mind through repetition and imagination that something can feel real before it becomes real. And once that shift happens internally, the external world has no choice but to catch up. Have you ever noticed how a single thought can change your entire mood in seconds? One moment you're calm, and the next, just by imagining something going wrong, your body tightens, your heart feels heavier, and your energy drops. Now flip that for a second. Think about a moment when you imagine something exciting, maybe unexpected money coming in, a message that changes everything, or a situation working out perfectly. Even if it hasn't happened yet, your body responds as if it's real. That right there is the doorway to understanding how imagination quietly shapes your reality. Most people underestimate their imagination because they've been taught it's just in their head, like it's something separate from the real world. But the truth is, your imagination is constantly influencing how you see, feel, and react to life. It's not just a creative tool, it's a powerful internal blueprint. Everything you experience externally is filtered through what you already accept internally. So if your inner world is filled with doubt, lack, or fear around money, that becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. Opportunities might pass right by you, or you might unconsciously block them, simply because they don't match what you believe is possible. The fascinating part is that your mind doesn't wait for reality to tell it what's true. It often decides first, and then reality follows. When you repeatedly imagine something with enough clarity and feeling, your subconscious begins to treat it as familiar, and what feels familiar starts to feel believable. This is why people who consistently visualize success often seem to get lucky. It's not random. Their imagination has already prepared them to recognize, accept, and act on opportunities that align with that inner picture. This is exactly why techniques like the ladder method work so effectively. They're not trying to force you to believe something you resist, like "I'm suddenly rich." Instead, they start with something neutral, something your mind doesn't argue with. By repeatedly imagining a simple act, like climbing a ladder, you begin to experience firsthand how imagination can translate into physical reality. And once you see that connection, something shifts. You stop seeing imagination as fantasy and start recognizing it as a tool. Now think about how this applies to money. If every time you think about money, your imagination automatically goes to stress, bills, or not enough, you're reinforcing that pattern over and over again. Even without realizing it, you're rehearsing lack. But when you consciously choose to imagine a different outcome, like receiving unexpected money, feeling secure, or having more than enough, you begin to interrupt that cycle. At first, it might feel unfamiliar, even a little uncomfortable. That's normal. You're stepping outside of what your mind is used to. But here's the key. Imagination works best when it feels real, not forced. It's not about repeating empty words or trying to hype yourself up. It's about gently stepping into a scene and letting yourself experience it. Maybe it's the feeling of checking your account and seeing more than you expected. Maybe it's the relief of paying for something without hesitation. Maybe it's the quiet confidence of knowing you're financially supported. When you allow yourself to feel those moments, even briefly, you're sending a clear message to your subconscious. This is normal for me. Over time, those imagined experiences begin to soften your resistance. The idea of having more money no longer feels distant or unrealistic. It starts to feel possible, then probable, and eventually natural. And as that internal shift happens, your behavior subtly changes too. You might make different decisions, notice different opportunities, or feel more open to receiving. None of this feels forced. It flows from the new assumptions you've planted within yourself. What's powerful about this process is that it doesn't rely on external proof to get started. You don't need to wait until you have more money to feel abundant. In fact, it works the other way around. You cultivate the feeling first, through imagination, and then reality begins to mirror it. That's the part many people miss. They're waiting for evidence before they allow themselves to believe. But imagination flips that sequence. And no, this doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means your actions become aligned instead of desperate. Instead of chasing money from a place of lack, you move from a place of expectation. There's a quiet difference in energy there, and it changes how things unfold. People respond differently, opportunities appear more naturally, and what once felt out of reach starts to come closer. So when you hear that imagination creates reality, it's not some abstract or mystical idea. It's a practical process happening within you all the time. The question is whether you're using it consciously or letting it run on autopilot. Once you become aware of it, once you start choosing what you consistently imagine, you begin to take back control. And from that place, manifesting something like unexpected money doesn't feel impossible anymore. It feels like a natural extension of the inner world you've been quietly building all along. Let's be honest for a second. Money stress has a way of creeping into your mind even when you're trying your best to stay positive. You might sit down to relax and suddenly a thought pops up about a bill, an expense, or something you can't afford right now. And just like that, your mood shifts. It's not just the situation itself, it's the constant loop of thinking about it, replaying it, and feeling it over and over again. That's the part most people don't realize they're stuck in. It's not just a financial situation, it's a mental habit. Detaching from money stress doesn't mean you stop caring about your finances or ignore your responsibilities. It means you stop letting those stressful thoughts control your emotional state all day long. There's a difference between being aware of your situation and being consumed by it. When you're constantly thinking, I don't have enough, or how will I manage this, you're reinforcing a feeling of lack. And the more you repeat that feeling, the more natural it becomes for your mind to return to it. What makes this tricky is that it feels justified. Of course, you'd think about money if you need it. Of course, you'd feel stressed if things are tight. But here's the shift. Just because a thought feels valid doesn't mean it's helpful. In fact, most of the time, those repetitive worries don't lead to solutions. They just drain your energy and keep you focused on what's missing. Imagine carrying a heavy bag everywhere you go. At first, you might not notice how much it weighs because you're used to it. But over time, it starts to slow you down, affect your posture, and make everything feel harder than it needs to be. Money stress works the same way. It becomes this constant background weight that you carry into every decision, every conversation, every moment of your day. And the problem isn't just the weight, it's that you've forgotten what it feels like to put it down. Detaching is that moment of setting the bag aside, even if just for a little while. It's giving yourself permission to experience relief before anything in your outer world has changed. And this is where people often resist. They think, how can I feel relaxed when my situation isn't solved yet? But the truth is, waiting for everything to be perfect before you allow yourself to feel better keeps you stuck. You end up postponing peace. What if, instead, you decided to interrupt the pattern? Not by forcing yourself to believe everything is fine, but by simply choosing not to dwell on the stress every time it shows up. When a worrying thought appears, you notice it, but you don't follow it down the same path. You don't add more stories to it. You gently shift your focus to something else, something neutral or even slightly better feeling. It sounds small, but that's how patterns begin to break. This is especially important when you're using techniques like the ladder method or any form of visualization. If you spend a few minutes imagining something positive, but then the rest of your day is filled with worry and doubt, you're sending mixed signals to your mind. It's like taking one step forward and two steps back. Detaching from stress helps create consistency. It allows those positive inner experiences to take root instead of being immediately overwritten. And here's something interesting. You don't actually need to feel excited or overly positive for this to work. You just need to feel a little less tense, a little more neutral. Relief is often more powerful than forced happiness. When you move from stress to calm, even slightly, you're already shifting your state. And that shift creates space for new thoughts, new ideas, and new possibilities to enter. You might start noticing small changes. Maybe you react differently to a situation that would have stressed you out before. Maybe you feel less urgency, less pressure, or maybe you simply catch yourself before spiraling into worry. These are all signs that you're loosening the grip that stress has on you. And as that grip loosens, something else happens. You become more open. When you're not constantly focused on what's lacking, you begin to notice what's available. Opportunities that once went unnoticed suddenly stand out. Conversations take on a different tone. Even your decisions feel less forced and more natural. It's not that the world suddenly changes overnight, it's that your relationship with it shifts, and that shift can lead to very real, tangible results. Detaching from money stress is not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to let those problems define your internal state. It's choosing again and again to return to a place of calm, even if it's just for a moment. And those moments add up. They create a new baseline, a new way of being that isn't rooted in lack or fear. And from that place, everything changes. Because when your mind is no longer occupied with constant worry, it has the freedom to imagine, to create, and to receive. That's when techniques like the ladder method truly begin to work. Not because you forced anything, but because you made space for something new to enter. Have you ever wondered why some thoughts just stick with you, while others disappear almost instantly? You can hear something once and forget it, but repeat it a few times, and suddenly it becomes familiar, almost automatic. That's not random. Your mind is designed to learn through repetition. It pays attention to what you consistently return to, not what you briefly touch and then abandon. And when it comes to manifesting something like unexpected money, this simple principle becomes incredibly important. Most people try a technique once or twice, don't see immediate results, and assume it doesn't work. But the truth is, the power isn't in doing something once. It's in doing it consistently enough that your subconscious begins to accept it as normal. Think about any habit you've ever formed, whether it's waking up at a certain time, checking your phone first thing in the morning, or even the way you react to stress. None of that happened overnight. It was built through repetition, often without you even realizing it. The same applies to your inner world. Every time you imagine something, especially with feeling, you're leaving an impression. At first, that impression might be light, almost like writing on sand. It's there for a moment, but easily washed away by your usual thoughts and patterns. But when you repeat that same scene again and again, calmly, consistently, it's like carving into stone. It becomes deeper, more stable, and much harder to erase. This is exactly what the ladder technique is built on. You're not just imagining climbing a ladder once and hoping for the best. You're returning to that same simple experience night after night, allowing it to become familiar. You feel the steps beneath your feet, your hands gripping the sides, your body moving upward. There's no pressure, no urgency, just repetition. And with each repetition, the experience sinks a little deeper into your subconscious. What's interesting is that your subconscious doesn't respond to effort. It responds to consistency. You don't need to strain or try to make it work. In fact, trying too hard can sometimes create resistance. It's like when you're trying to remember something, and the harder you push, the more it slips away. But when you relax and let it come naturally, it often appears on its own. The same gentle approach works here. You're not forcing belief, you're allowing familiarity to build. Over time, something subtle begins to shift. The scene you've been imagining starts to feel less like something you're creating and more like something you've already experienced. It loses that sense of distance. And once your mind accepts something as familiar, it stops questioning it. That's when the real change happens. Because what your subconscious accepts as normal, your life begins to reflect. Now, when you apply this to money, the process becomes even more meaningful. If your dominant thoughts about money have been rooted in lack or stress, those patterns have been reinforced through repetition for years. They're deeply ingrained, which is why they feel so automatic. You don't have to try to think, I don't have enough. It just shows up. That's the result of long-term subconscious imprinting. So when you introduce a new pattern, like imagining receiving money, feeling secure, or experiencing abundance, it might feel unfamiliar at first. That's not a sign that it's wrong. It's a sign that it's new. And just like any new habit, it needs repetition to take hold. Each time you return to that new inner experience, you're weakening the old pattern and strengthening the new one. What makes this process powerful is that it doesn't rely on external validation to continue. You don't need immediate proof in your bank account to keep going. The repetition itself is doing the work. It's quietly reshaping your internal beliefs, one impression at a time. And as those beliefs shift, your actions, reactions, and perceptions begin to shift as well. You might start noticing that you feel a little more at ease when thinking about money. Maybe you don't react as strongly to financial stress. Maybe you feel more open to opportunities that you would have dismissed before. These are all signs that the new imprint is taking hold. It's not always dramatic. It's often subtle, gradual, and easy to overlook if you're only looking for big, immediate changes. The key is to trust the process enough to stay consistent, not perfectly consistent, just gently committed. Some days your imagination might feel vivid, other days it might feel dull. That's okay. What matters is that you keep returning to it. You keep showing up even in a small way, because every repetition, no matter how simple, is adding to the imprint. And eventually there comes a point where the inner shift becomes undeniable. What once felt like effort now feels natural. What once felt like imagination now feels like memory. And from that place, the outer world begins to align in ways that feel almost effortless. So instead of asking, is this working yet? A better question might be, am I giving it enough repetition to take root? Because once it does, once that imprint is firmly established, the results tend to follow. Not because you forced them, but because you allowed them to grow from within. Have you ever noticed how the last few minutes before you fall asleep feel different from the rest of your day? It's quieter, softer, almost like your mind is more open, more receptive. You're no longer fully engaged with the outside world, and your thoughts begin to drift in a way that feels less controlled and more fluid. That space, right there between being awake and asleep, is where something powerful happens. And most people pass through it every single night without realizing the opportunity it holds. This is exactly why the practice of living the scene nightly is so effective. It's not about squeezing visualization into a busy, distracted moment during the day. It's about choosing the one time when your mind naturally relaxes its guard. When you lie down, close your eyes, and let your body settle, you're entering a state where your subconscious becomes far more impressionable. You're not overanalyzing, you're not questioning, you're simply experiencing. And that's the key word here, experiencing. This isn't about watching a scene like a movie playing in your head. It's about stepping into it as if you're actually there. If you're using something like the ladder technique, you don't just see yourself climbing. You feel it. You notice the texture under your hands, the movement of your body, the slight shift in balance as you lift yourself higher. It's simple, but it's real in that moment. And when you repeat this every night, it starts to feel less like imagination and more like memory. What makes this nightly practice so powerful is its consistency. During the day, your mind is pulled in 100 different directions. You're thinking about tasks, conversations, responsibilities. It's noisy. But at night, everything slows down. There's a natural rhythm to it. And when you bring the same scene into that quiet space night after night, you're creating a steady imprint. You're not forcing it. You're allowing it to settle gently into your subconscious. At first, you might feel like nothing is happening. Maybe your mind wanders, or the scene doesn't feel very vivid. That's completely normal. The goal isn't perfection, it's familiarity. Each time you return to the scene, even if it's only for a minute or two, you're reinforcing it. You're telling your mind, this matters. This is something I come back to. And your mind responds to that repetition by gradually accepting it as part of your internal reality. There's also something deeply calming about this process. Instead of going to sleep with worries, overthinking, or stress, You're giving your mind a simple, focused experience. You're replacing mental noise with clarity. And that alone can shift your overall state. You might find yourself falling asleep more peacefully, waking up feeling a little lighter, even if nothing has changed externally yet. That's a sign that something is shifting internally. And here's where it connects to manifesting money. The ladder scene itself is just the beginning. It's training your mind to accept and embody an experience. Once you understand that feeling of being in the scene, you can apply it to anything. Imagine going to sleep while experiencing the feeling of financial ease, of receiving money unexpectedly, of knowing things are working out in your favor, not as a wish, but as a quiet, lived moment in your mind. When you do this consistently, something interesting happens. Your relationship with money begins to soften. The urgency, the pressure, the constant mental tension starts to ease. You're no longer going to bed thinking about what's missing. You're ending your day with a sense of having already experienced something fulfilling. And that shift, repeated night after night, begins to reshape how you see your reality. You might not notice it immediately, but over time, the effects build. Your reactions during the day change. Situations that would have stressed you out before feel more manageable. You become less reactive, more grounded. And from that place, you're naturally more open to opportunities, ideas, and solutions that align with what you've been experiencing internally. The beauty of living the scene nightly is that it doesn't require a lot of effort or time. It's not another task to add to your day. It's something you gently step into as your day ends. There's no pressure to get it right, no need to force emotions. You simply return to the same experience again and again until it feels natural. And eventually, it reaches a point where it's no longer something you do, it becomes something you are. The scene feels familiar, almost expected, and when something feels expected internally, it has a way of showing up externally, often in ways you didn't predict. So instead of letting your mind wander into stress or worry each night, you're choosing to guide it somewhere intentional. You're using that quiet, receptive state to plant something meaningful. And as those nightly moments add up, they begin to shape your reality, not through force, but through gentle, consistent experience.